Well, hello, and welcome back to another podcast episode with Brittney Bundles. You are listening to the Brittney Bundles podcast, where we empower people through entrepreneurship. So, today, what I want to talk about is I want to talk about the importance of building your community outside of major social media platforms, and also some different examples and some ways that you can do that. I do like to share examples from my personal experience just because I feel like it gives more depth to the examples and explanations. I would also enjoy for you all to go back and listen to some of the other entrepreneurial episodes where I've had other entrepreneurs on with me, just so that you can get another perspective on some of the topics that we talk about here. I also want to ask you all to share this podcast episode. Sharing helps to promote other businesses that have sponsored episodes and also other entrepreneurs that have come on the platform and share their journey. It also helps to spread awareness about entrepreneurship in general. I've been told that this podcast has been very motivational to some entrepreneurs listening, insightful, and also filled with a lot of good information. So be sure to go ahead and share it. You can share the podcast by sharing it on social media, just clicking the share button, posting it to your Facebook or Twitter account, formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. You can share it by sharing the podcast episode in the form of a text message, word of mouth, turning the episode on while you're riding in the car with a family member or a friend. So go ahead and get creative. Share the podcast, please. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to give the video a thumbs up. Please also make sure that you are subscribed and that your post notifications are on. If you want to stay connected to the podcast community, please follow our podcast Instagram at Brittney Bundles_podcast. That is Brittney Bundles, BRITTNEY, Bundles, BUNDLES, _podcast, PODCAST. You can also listen to the other podcast episodes that are uploaded to YouTube by going to my playlist and clicking on podcast. I'll give you all a moment to do that, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right. So welcome back. Thanks so much for sharing. Today, we're going to be talking about building your community outside of major social media platforms. I chose this topic because it is so imperative for us to think long term whenever you decide to start your business, right? Like, I'm not someone that's going to give you advice or even share my experiences in hopes that you just have a great season or a great year. But I understand that it's somewhat easy to start a business and to generate sales, but it's not so easy to continuously keep that avenue flowing with revenue and create additional streams on top of that. And so that's what I want to talk about in this podcast episode. It is super important that you don't get wrapped up into just one area or one platform when you are considering monetizing your content, because so many things can happen. I mean, take YouTube for an example. I started YouTube about 4 or 5 years at this point. It may be a little bit longer. And YouTube has had a lot of changes during my run. They've had times where they've paid a lot more. I know towards the beginning of my YouTube career, I got paid a lot more for uploading videos than I get paid now. I understand a lot of content creators experience that. And that's why, if you've noticed, or one of the reasons why, if you've noticed, a lot of different content creators are now on different platforms. They're not just on one specific platform, because anything can happen. You know, YouTube can change their policies, which they have. And I think that YouTube is a great platform. Despite the changes that they've had, it's still a phenomenal platform to use for marketing your business, for connecting with other like-minded individuals, and also for receiving income, despite the fluctuations. But it is important, like I said before, to not wrap your eggs in one basket, or not put your eggs in one basket, so to speak. Same with like Twitter. Same with Instagram. There are some people that only have following on Instagram, and let's say, or even TikTok, and let's say, God forbid, but let's say that TikTok gets closed down in a few months, like the word was going around a while ago that in November TikTok may be banned. if that happens and you haven't done the work to convert your followers to another platform, what do you do? And so it's not saying that you can't start from scratch and rebuild your platform, regain your following. But I'm saying it works better, in my opinion. It's more wise if you go ahead and start that process now, so that if something does happen, you have another outlet to continue on with your business and your community is still there. Community is everything in business. If I did not build the community and the following that I have now outside of YouTube, I'm not sure how well my businesses would be doing. But I have a community that I've built on YouTube and outside of YouTube. And I'm going to talk about how I did that outside of YouTube, where I can still market and put out different products and services and still get a good amount of support from the support that I've gained on maybe like YouTube or even Facebook. I always like to convert my following to a separate platform as well. First thing I want to go over is an email mailing list. So an email mailing list is super important for all businesses because it helps to build and maintain connections, and it's also a good option, a good outlet for monetizing opportunities. So with me, with my email mailing list that I've had for Bad Chick Hair, my hair extension company, I've had that mailing list for some years, and I have over 900 mailing subscribers to this day. And so with that email mailing list, I'm able to send out not just marketing material, but I'm also able to share new products that I'm offering or new services that I'm offering. I'm actually going to be pivoting my hair website. It's going to be a pretty big shift in a few months or maybe even sooner. So if you're not subscribed to my email mailing list, please do so now. You can do that by going to badchickhair.com. And then I also have an email mailing list for those that are interested in keeping up with what I'm doing, like any mentoring that I'm doing, any webinars, workshops, things like that, through my second website, which is keepingupwithbrittney.com. So subscribe there to my mailing list if you haven't already. But if something happens with YouTube, if something happens with Facebook, I still have my community right there via email where I can still get in contact and I can still essentially create different options and services and even sell different products to continue that stream of income and also to continue to stay connected with my community of support. I think some people oftentimes don't think about how important it is to not only get your following and attract subscribers and followers, but also to keep that relationship there. It's easier to make a friend than it is to keep that friendship. And so taking that analogy and applying it to business, it's going to be very wise to try to convert as many people as you can to an off-base system. So an email mailing list, like I mentioned, that's one of the systems that I would consider like an off-base. You still have your following. People are still able to, watch your videos on YouTube, for example, and like your posts on Facebook. But then you also have a different platform where you can still stay connected. You can still nurture that relationship. And then you also have another opportunity to monetize. Let's say, for example, I was going to create an event, networking event. I would be at a further advantage because of the following that I have converted in my email mailing list than someone that doesn't have a following outside of just one platform. So it's important to consider that too. Right now you may not be wanting to do anything extra with your business. Right now you may not really see a bright future for your business, but we're not living for just the right now. We're living for, I hope so, we're living for our future, right? And so eventually, even if you're not doing what you want to, or if your business isn't thriving in the way that you had hoped it would at this point, you don't let that discourage you to a point where you're not thinking about your future. Always think about the future of your business and the future of your supporters. The next thing I want to go over, the next option or idea, is a blog. So I do have up 2 blogs, but I haven't been as consistent nor really passionate with those blogs. And just like I mentioned a little bit ago that I'm going to be doing some major revamping with my Bad Chick Hair business, I'm also going to be incorporating new blogs. And I understand what direction I want to go in now, so I'm even more motivated and passionate about getting those new blogs out. And if you're subscribed to my email mailing list, you'll be able to follow that journey, and I'll be able to give you updates on how everything is going. But also creating a blog where people can follow along and engage and find out what you're doing, what you're thinking, get new inside information, because it's also really important to create that network outside of your social media platforms, not just to promote and to monetize per se, but also to share and give back to your community of support. So what information can they benefit from? You know, if you have people that are following you because they're interested in your business advice, what type of business advice can you give back to them? What kind of business webinars or master classes can you conduct to help them in certain areas in their business? So just figuring out what you can do to give back is also going to be a great way to continue to build and strengthen those relationships within your support circle, and you're not relying just on one social media platform. You'll be amazed how many people literally just rely on one social media platform, and then when that platform doesn't do what it's been doing, or when the owners of the platforms sell the platform, or when the terms and conditions change, or when the monetization requirements change, they're like, what the heck do I do? I remember doing that with my podcast. I was using Anchor, and Anchor was working great. I was getting paid pretty well. And they were using Stripe as like their payment system, and everything was working really well until, I would say, pretty recently they decided to, I think, was it Anchor? It decided to not, like, it was a massive change. And so we got notification that the Anchor platform was changing and to switch over to another platform that they were recommending. But I hadn't really taken the time to dive into researching other podcast platforms. I really hadn't taken the time to really build like a sacred following for my podcast. But I'm so thankful that I have a Instagram for my podcast. I don't have a Facebook, and I don't really have a dedicated website for it. Now, I'm saying I don't really have it because I do have a page on my Keeping Up with Brittney website that I mentioned earlier in the podcast, for my podcast. However, it's still not as many opportunities to connect and strengthen that particular community with my podcast supporters. So that was a wake-up call for me that, hey, this podcast platform isn't an option at this point. And so for the people that are listening, how are you going to connect with them? Had I not had an Instagram, I'm not sure how I would have connected with everyone. I would have had to be very intentional and very time conservative. And I would have had to make sure that I got out the message as quickly as I could that, hey, now I'm going to be recording my podcast on YouTube, and hope that everyone heard it before the Anchor system was no longer working. Now, I think you can still go back and listen to some of the episodes that you uploaded to Anchor, but I do know that the monetization changed, and it's just a completely different type of setup at this point. So that's another reason why it's important to not just rely on one social media platform. The next platform that I want to mention is Patreon. Patreon is also a good platform to connect with your supporters and have a different platform to do that with. Patreon, and I would also say like your own website. So like I mentioned, my Keeping Up with Brittney website, that is my landing space for people that want to know what I'm doing, what's next, when am I uploading a new podcast episode, different thoughts, different discount codes, all of that is on my website, keepingupwithbrittney.com. And so it is also very wise to create a separate website from your main business. So Bad Chick Here was my primary business, and that's been one of my larger businesses for years at this point. But I understand the importance of not just relying solely on that website either. I understand the importance of making sure that I have different supporters on different platforms, and I have a way where we can all connect, because anything could happen, right? Like something could go wrong with my Bad Chick Here website. Let's say, for an example, there's an error, there's a glitch, and it's just not working. That's happened before. Not too often, but it has happened. I still want there to be a backup site. Also with YouTube, okay? Like I said throughout this podcast, not putting all of your eggs in one basket, not relying on just one platform, but also not relying just on one channel. So my main channel is at Brittney Bundles on YouTube, and I thank all of you for listening and subscribing over there. If you're listening to this podcast, a good chance that you're currently on my main YouTube YouTube page. So thank you, and make sure you're subscribed, please, again. But I also created a second channel at Brittney's Place, and anything can happen with this channel. This channel could be hacked, God forbid, or this channel could get into violation or be in review. And sometimes channels get in violation and they really don't, it's according to the owners of the channel, they didn't do anything, and it takes some time for YouTube to review that to give them their channel back. There's just a lot of things that can happen. But think about if I didn't have a backup channel or another channel, and all I did was rely strictly on my main channel, I would be in a worse off spot than me making sure that I had multiple channels. Now, again, I can say that my main channel has a lot more subscribers. I'm over 9,000 subscribers on my main YouTube channel than I am on my secondary channel at Brittney's Place. I currently have 61 subscribers, but still, just the idea of building another platform with my community of support is going to help in the long run make sure that my business has more stable security, and that I'm able to constantly reach out to my network of supporters no matter what happens to either channel or any platform. Also, I don't know why I mentioned Patreon and a personalized website together, because I had Patreon listed and then a personalized website. I went over the personalized website benefits during this podcast, but I want to touch on Patreon. So Patreon is this platform where you can have different supporters pay a fee, a monthly service fee or access fee, to get access to personalized content, exclusive content. And I think that that's also a great way to have your community of support, not just in one space. But I can tell you, from someone that has utilized Patreon, it can be challenging when you have so many different areas of business to run. Like when I was doing Patreon very frequently, I was finding myself a little burnt out, because I'm like, okay, what am I going to talk about on Patreon that I haven't already talked about on my other platforms? So although it's important to space out your following and have multiple platforms, be prepared to create more content as well, because just posting the same thing across all of your different platforms, sometimes it could get sometimes it can feel like it's becoming redundant to some of your followers. I'm not saying it's not wise to post some of the same content, because it is, but I'm saying that it also is beneficial to post additional posts on some platforms. For example, if you're a TikToker and you're also a YouTuber, it makes sense to post some of your I would say all of your TikToks to YouTube if it's relevant to your channel and what you're doing, as shorts. But then also having different specialized shorts on your TikTok for those that are following both, so that they see the benefit in following you on both platforms. Now, some will still follow you on both platforms regardless if you post a variety of content or not. But to make sure that you're catering to as many people as you can, like I said before, it would be beneficial to have certain content on certain platforms so that you can have a good amount of people watching your TikTok and also watching your YouTube and also following you on like Facebook and Instagram. And they're not like, well, I'm not going to follow her on all these platforms because she does the same thing on all platforms, so I might as well just follow her on Facebook and that's good enough. And that takes away from some of your monetization opportunities. So just be aware of that. Also, creating different like off-site groups, for example, like a Facebook group, having your supporters on Facebook, but then also creating like a personalized group where if something happened when your main Facebook page was like hacked, or where you decided to not post on your main Facebook page as much, or when you want to post in anticipation of like a book that you're releasing or a new masterclass that's coming out, you have a community specific to that. You may not want to post all of the details pertaining to an event that you're going to be a part of next month, but you may want your closest following, your closest support group, people that not only follow you on Facebook, but also have decided to join your group, to have access to maybe a discount code or an early bird special, or any other special services that you're offering. So it's a way to stay further connected, but it's also another way to generate more income. The last platform idea that I want to go over is an app, creating a personalized app. This is something I thought about doing years ago with my hair website, just never got down to it. I reached out to different app developers. I got different price quotes, and ultimately I decided not to do it. When you're an entrepreneur, you realize that not every single good idea needs to be hopped on at that specific moment. And so a big part of being in business is not just knowing when to start something, but also knowing when to stop, and not just knowing when you have a great idea, but also realizing when you need to implement that idea. There are so many entrepreneurs that are very impulsive. I can raise my hand. I've been very impulsive as well in the past. And what I've learned from that is good and bad can come from being impulsive, but making sure that you're moving at the right time and doing the right investment at the right time is very crucial. Like, the right timing is key. And so a lot of entrepreneurs kind of are confused about what their right timing is. And although you can watch videos and read books, unfortunately, there's no one that's going to tell you when your right time is. It's just something that you kind of have to know, and then, push your fear to the side and go for it. And even if it's the right time, doesn't mean that you're not going to experience any adversities or any complications or trials. So I just wanted to put that out there for someone. But an app is another good idea to look into, having your supporters on an app. So you can still reach out. You can still maybe offer different tokens or points or coins based on different products or courses or services that they embark on in your app. And maybe, they get an incentive for having X amount of tokens or stars or whatever it is you're offering through that app. Also personalized information and just a community where they can reach out and talk to other like-minded individuals, maybe something that you want to look into for your business. So this podcast in general just wanted to stress the importance of not having all of your supporters in one space. Be proactive and space as many support groups out as you possibly can. That's going to help in the long run if and when anything happens with the platform that you're currently using. I think as entrepreneurs, we all kind of have that one platform that we love the most, or that those few platforms that we utilize the most. But it's important to make sure that we don't get too comfortable and that we're always thinking about, well, if this doesn't happen, what else can I do? And so having that email mailing list, having the app, having a blog or a Patreon and a personalized website, all of those different platforms can definitely become helpful and a way to keep those streams open, and also a way to continue to nurture those relationships with your supporters. So I really hope that this podcast helped. Like I say in all of my episodes, I don't want this to end. If you'd like to be a guest on the Brittney Bundles podcast, please email letter B as in Brittney, Talks, TALKS @yahoo.com. Also, please follow the Instagram podcast at BrittneyBundles_podcast. You can also follow me on Instagram at Brittney_Bundles. That's Brittney, BRITTNEY_Bundles, BUNDLES. I'm on Facebook, Brittney Bundles, X, formerly known as Twitter, Brittney Bundles, and also on YouTube, Brittney Bundles. Until next time, I'll talk to you all in the next podcast episode.